Today, we're diving deep into a subject that for many remains shrouded in overwhelming fear and nuclear war survival. What if the most terrifying global scenario isn't an instant apocalyptic end, but rather a profoundly challenging test of practical knowledge and human ingenuity? Imagine dispelling those overwhelming myths to reveal surprising, actionable facts about enduring the unimaginable. Our mission is to equip you, the listener, with knowledge that transcends common fears and misinformation, offering a shortcut to being truly well-informed about a topic most people understandably shy away from.
It's a crucial mission, I think, because while the topic itself can be daunting, it's the insights from decades of rigorous study are genuinely empowering. That at the heart of our deep dive today is a foundational guide called Nuclear War Survival Skills. It's a resource stemming from extensive practical research conducted right here in the U.S. at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. We're not talking about Hollywood scenarios or abstract prophecies. This is about tested, real-world solutions.
And the architect behind much of this research and the author of the book is a truly remarkable individual named Cresson H. Kearny. His background alone hints at his pragmatic, principled approach to danger. He wasn't just an academic. He was someone with a profound understanding of the world's complexities.
Indeed, Kearny graduated summa cum laude in civil engineering from Princeton in 1937. Even then, his studies naturally acquainted him with the theoretical magnitude of nuclear energy's destructive potential, even before the atomic age truly dawned. Wow. He then went on to earn 2 geology degrees from Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar, and which gave him an even broader scientific perspective.
That's an impressive intellectual foundation. But what truly sets Kearny apart, I think, is how he translated that deep knowledge into practical action. Before World War II even began, he was observing how effectively aerial attack preparations were organized in England.
Yeah, he saw it firsthand.
He held a deep personal aversion to dictatorships, remarkably regardless of their political stripe. And astonishingly, during the Munich crisis, he actively served as a courier for an underground group helping anti-Nazis escape from Czechoslovakia.
That's incredible.
This isn't just someone theorizing about survival. This is someone who personally grasped the desperate, urgent need for practical solutions in the face of immense human conflict. It's a lived philosophy, not just an academic pursuit.
Precisely. And this hands-on, principled approach underpins the entire book. The practical survival instructions contained within Nuclear War Survival Skills were not born from armchair speculation. They were the direct result of extensive laboratory work and rigorous field testing.
Right.
This research wasn't a fleeting project. It was conducted systematically between 1964 and 1979, spanning a significant period of the Cold War.
That's a long span of dedicated government-backed research, isn't it? This comprehensive effort was made possible by crucial support from key U.S. government entities. Initially, the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission, which later evolved into the Energy Research and Development Administration, and finally the Department of Energy.
Right.
So this was a sustained official endeavor to understand civilian survival.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just institutional support. Individuals like James C. Breese and later Conrad V. Chester at Oak Ridge National Laboratory wholeheartedly supported Kearny's down-to-earth research, as they called it.
Down to earth. I like that.
Chester, in particular, was not only a co-developer of several of the survival items described in the book, but also played an integral role in planning the experiments that rigorously tested them. This isn't abstract theory. It's thoroughly tested practical knowledge derived from real-world application.
So why aren't we digging into this challenging topic today? It's not about instilling fear or encouraging alarmism. Far from it. Our aim is to dissect a comprehensive fact-based resource to understand what is genuinely known about surviving a nuclear conflict, and how that often contrasts sharply with the sensationalized narratives we encounter in popular culture.
Exactly.
It's about practical, tested solutions, and the unexpected clarity that comes from understanding concrete steps, even in the face of abstract, terrifying threats. About being informed, not afraid.
Being informed is key.
Okay, let's unpack this with our first the Pearl Harbor scenario. You know that idea of a sudden unannounced nuclear strike that catches everyone completely off guard, leading to instant, no-warning devastation?
Yeah, the out-of-the-blue attack.
Most movies, most popular narratives Lean into this immediate cataclysmic vision.
That's a deeply ingrained but crucial misconception. Our source, based on consensus among strategists, clearly states that a nuclear war would most likely begin only after a period of days to months of worsening crisis.
Days to months?
Yeah. This isn't an instantaneous trigger. It's a slow, escalating burn, a geopolitical crisis that ratchets up over time.
A slow burn that surprisingly gives you, the listener, a critical advantage. Time. The book points to extensive Russian plans and preparations to survive a nuclear war that are exploited explicitly based on using at least several days during an escalating crisis to get most urban dwellers out of the cities and other high-risk areas. During this window, they'd also work to build or improve shelters and protect essential machinery. It's a very deliberate quantitative approach to national survival that relies on a significant pre-attack phase.
And here's where it gets particularly relevant for Americans. Our satellite intelligence and other advanced sources would reveal such massive movements within a day.
Within a day.
What this means is, under the most likely circumstances, Americans would have several days in which to make life-saving preparations. This single insight transforms the terrifying unknown of instant oblivion into a tangible opportunity for action, a race against time. But a race with a clear starting gun is, and a crucial head start.
That completely upends the Hollywood narrative, doesn't it?
It really does. It shifts the focus from inevitability to preparedness.
So the first critical step to survival isn't hoping it doesn't happen. It's recognizing that if it happens, you'll likely have a crucial window, perhaps 48 hours or more. Now let's talk about targeting, because that directly impacts you depending on where you live.
Right.
When we think of nuclear targets, we often visualize entire cities being obliterated. But the book clarifies that modern warheads increasingly prioritize accuracy and military objectives.
That's an important distinction.
Yeah.
Modern warheads are designed for precision, capable of hitting targets within a few hundred feet of their precise aims.
Wow. A few hundred feet.
These targets are primarily militarily important fixed sites. U.S. fixed-site weapons like missile silos, command and control centers, military installations, oil refineries, industrial plants producing war essentials, long runways, and major electric generating plants.
Okay.
The goal is to cripple military and industrial capacity, not just indiscriminately destroy population centers.
And here's the crucial overlap that affects your personal risk profile. Many of these are either in or near cities. So if you live in or near a city, your best chance of surviving a heavy nuclear attack is to get out of cities during a worsening crisis and into fallout shelters. Away from probable targets makes sense.
It's about distance from those key sites.
It's about understanding that while cities contain strategic targets, the primary aim is rarely purely civilian destruction, but rather military and industrial incapacitation. This means if you can move away from those specific target zones, your odds dramatically improve.
Beyond the target selection, the type of detonation also profoundly impacts the danger. The source differentiates between air bursts and surface bursts, and the implications for fallout are significant. It's not just if a bomb goes off, but how it goes off.
Let's break those down. An air burst, where the weapon detonates high above the ground, objects about twice as large an area to blast, effects severe enough to destroy soft targets like buildings. But, and this is absolutely key for your survival, air bursts produce only very tiny particles that remain airborne for weeks to years.
Tiny particles staying up high, they're widely
dispersed globally and due to radioactive decay over time, become much less life-endangering by the time they reach you. So from an airburst, your primary dangers are the immediate blast effects, the thermal pulses of intense light and heat radiation, and the very penetrating initial nuclear radiation.
From the fireball blast heat initial radiation. Got it. Now, in stark contrast, surface or near-surface bursts are primarily used to knock out our retaliatory missiles by being surface burst or near-surface burst on their hardened silos.
So hitting hard targets.
Exactly. These detonations create massive craters, throw up vast amounts of pulverized earth and debris, which then become promptly deposited larger fallout particles. These particles are significantly more dangerous locally because they fall rapidly and are intensely radioactive in the immediate hours and days after detonation.
Okay, so surface bursts mean heavy local fallout, quick and dirty, literally.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So what does this mean for you, the listener? The expert guidance is unequivocally clear. If you are a survival-minded American, you should prepare to survive heavy fallout wherever you are.
Wherever you are, that's the key phrase.
This is because unpredictable winds may bring fallout from unexpected directions. Imagine fallout from a distant detonation being carried by prevailing winds and changing direction and suddenly heading your way.
Or you could get those localized hotspots created by rainouts or snowouts, where precipitation basically scrubs the particles from the air and dumps them in one area. Yeah, even from distant air bursts. And of course, the enemy might use surface bursts in your general area anyway, maybe to crater runways or disrupt other actions, producing heavy local fallout. Regardless of whether your immediate location was a primary military target, the bottom line
is preparing for fallout is a universal consideration. It's about being ready for the worst-case fallout scenario, even if you're far from an obvious military target.
This knowledge helps us move from generalized, overwhelming fear to specific, actionable steps. Understanding the nuances of detonation types and fallout patterns transforms a paralyzing threat into something you can actually prepare for.
And that leads us directly to our next major point. Shattering the pervasive myths that nuclear war is unsurvivable, that it's necessarily the end of everything. You've undoubtedly heard statements like the US and the Soviet Union have the power to kill the world's population several times over.
Oh yeah, that one's famous.
This is a truly terrifying thought, one that can lead to a sense of fatalism. But the source explicitly calls this a fallacy.
It is indeed a misleading calculation that's often used. One way it's done involves taking the number of deaths per kiloton exploded over Hiroshima or Nagasaki and then multiplying it by the total kilotons in a global arsenal. This calculation operates under the absurd, unstated assumption that the world's population could be gathered into circular crowds and each a few miles in diameter with a population density equal to downtown Hiroshima or Nagasaki. And then a small weapon would be precisely detonated over each crowd.
That's completely unrealistic.
Totally. Furthermore, such calculations are based on exaggerations of the dangers from long-lasting radiation and other harmful effects of a nuclear war. In reality, populations are dispersed, and the physics of blast effects and radiation decay don't scale linearly in such a way.
So the kill the world multiple times over claim, a cornerstone of many anti-nuclear arguments, is based on entirely unrealistic, physically impossible scenarios. Another chilling concept that gained immense traction and fostered this sense of futility was nuclear winter.
Yes, nuclear winter. The idea of unsurvivable nuclear winter is described in the source as a discredited theory. Since its conception in 1982, it has been used to frighten additional millions into believing the survival is futile, and thus disarmament is the only viable path.
But science pushed back.
But it's crucial to know that there were non-propagandizing scientists who courageously challenged this narrative.
And this is where the story gets really compelling, revealing the tension between science and political narratives. Atmospheric scientists Starley L. Thompson and Stephen H. Schneider, in their 1986 Foreign Affairs article, meticulously showed that on scientific grounds, the global apocalyptic conclusions of the initial nuclear winter hypothesis can now be relegated to a vanishing low level of probability.
Okay, so they refined the science.
They weren't dismissing the very real dangers of nuclear war, but they were refining the scientific understanding, showing that the most extreme extinction-level scenarios were far less likely than initially posited.
And for their scientific honesty, they faced significant backlash. Stephen Schneider, for example, has been called a fascist by some disarmament supporters for having written Nuclear Winter Reappraised.
Whoa, that's intense.
It illustrates a critical point. Sometimes in a free country, truth will out anyway, although sometimes too late to effectively counter fast-hitting propaganda. It's a powerful testament to the importance of open scientific inquiry and intellectual integrity, even when it challenges politically convenient popular narratives.
It certainly is. And on the topic of firestorms, another terrifying image associated with nuclear war. The source clarifies that these conflagrations, like those that devastated Hamburg, Dresden, and Tokyo in World War II, would only occur where there's a very high concentration of combustible structures, typically in the very dense centers of a few old American cities. Crucially, they have never injected smoke into the stratosphere or caused appreciable cooling below its smoke cloud.
Right. So the global climate effects from firestorms, as originally theorized for nuclear winter, aren't supported by historical evidence.
This means the global climatic effects envisioned by initial nuclear winter theories based on firestorms are not supported by historical evidence. For you, in rural or suburban areas with lower building densities, fires are much less of a danger to those in earth-covered shelters. The energy needed to sustain a massive firestorm that simply isn't present in less dense areas.
Exactly. The scale and effect of fires are also subject to exaggeration, and understanding the specific conditions required for a firestorm helps to put the threat into a more realistic and ultimately more manageable perspective.
Let's quickly touch on what the book calls exotic weapons, things like chemical and biological weapons or neutron warheads. The source explains why these are largely inefficient killing agents compared to typical nuclear warheads in a strategic conflict.
The source clarifies that they could destroy neither our retaliatory weapons, nor our war-supporting installations, nor could they effectively incapacitate well-protected military personnel or infrastructure.
So not good for taking out military capability, right?
Furthermore, any such attack would invite U.S. nuclear retaliatory strikes, making them strategically undesirable for an adversary aiming to win a war. For you, the practical takeaway is that protective measures should primarily focus on surviving a nuclear attack, as it's identified as by far the most likely type of attack.
Okay.
Diversifying your preparations for less probable threats might dilute your effectiveness against the primary one.
So focus your efforts on the most probable threat, not the less efficient, less likely ones. That's a practical, focused mindset. Now let's shift our focus to the critical moments. What happens when an attack actually begins, and what immediate actions you should take? Okay, first, attack warnings. We often imagine loud sirens blaring across cities, alerting everyone to incoming danger and boo.
That's often the cinematic image, but the source highlights the significant limitations of traditional siren-based warning systems. In a real nuclear crisis, only a relatively small fraction of urban Americans could hear the sirens, especially if cities had already been partially evacuated during an escalating crisis.
And even if you heard them,
If they could hear them, the book observes that most people who would hear the attack warning signal either would not recognize it or would not believe it was a warning of actual attack, perhaps dismissing it as a test or a false alarm. You know the boy who cried wolf effect.
Yeah, exactly. And there's an even bigger, more pervasive technological problem that could render those systems useless. Electromagnetic pulse, or EMP. Can you explain how EMP fits into this and why it's so disruptive?
Certainly. The source describes how a coordinated enemy attack may include the detonation of a few submarine-launched ballistic missiles at high altitudes over the United States.
High-altitude bursts.
Right. These are strategically intended to knock out or disrupt U.S. military communications through the generation of intense electromagnetic pulse effects. However, these same EMP effects also could knock out the public power necessary to sound sirens and could put most unprotected broadcast casting stations off the air.
Wow. So the warning systems themselves could be casualties.
Exactly. The very systems designed to warn you might be silenced by the attack itself, leaving a critical void in official communication.
This means your most reliable warning might come not from a siren, but from the attack itself. And here's where it gets really interesting. Almost counterintuitive. The concept of life-saving, take cover warnings from early explosions. The book states that the great majority of Americans would not be injured by the first explosions of a nuclear attack.
That's a crucial point. These early explosions would give sufficient warning for most people to reach nearby shelter. In time, the signs you would see would be striking and unmistakable. The sky lit up to an astounding brightness, thunderous sounds of distant explosions, or the sudden outage of electric power, and most communications a direct consequence of empty.
So a bright flash, a boom, and the power goes out. That's the signal.
That's likely your most reliable signal. Yeah. These warnings would likely come from SOBM warheads, specifically targeting strategic air command bases, civilian airport runways, naval bases, and high-priority military command and communication centers. The goal for the adversary is to cripple military response, not immediately incinerate every civilian.
Even broken windows 40 miles away could serve as a sign of these initial distant blasts. So imagine a sudden blinding flash on the horizon, followed by a low rumble, and then your power or cell service goes dead. That's your urgent cue to take immediate action.
Right, get to shelter.
The source emphasizes that the large majority of citizens would not be injured by these early SLBM attacks, giving you crucial time for prepared actions. This means those vital first few minutes could dictate survival.
To expand on EMP's broader impact on modern life, it's defined as an intense burst of radio frequency radiation generated by a nuclear explosion. This burst can induce strong, quick rising surges of electric current and power transmission lines and long antennas, potentially burning out most unprotected electrical and electronic equipment.
So computers? Phones?
Yeah, unprotected computers, home appliances, radios, TVs, even the solid-state electrical components of some aircraft and of some motors of modern autos, trucks, and tractors. This emphasizes why non-electric exposure expedient solutions become so critical in a post-EMP environment, as much of our modern infrastructure could be rendered inoperable.
Given all this, how would you react in such an unimaginable scenario? The book delves into the psychology of survival, drawing on fascinating observations by Dr. von Gregers on common reactions to extreme danger. It's not necessarily what you'd expect from Hollywood.
Dr. von Greger has identified 3 stages in human psychological responses to great danger. The first is apathy, where people become indifferent to their own safety, a kind of numbing inability to try and save themselves or their families.
Okay.
The second is a compulsion to flee, a strong, often disorganized urge to escape, which can sometimes lead to more danger. But the most common reaction, and perhaps the most surprising, is emotional paralysis.
Emotional paralysis sounds absolutely terrifying, like being frozen by fear. But the source actually says it may be helpful. How can something like that possibly be beneficial?
It's described as a numbing of the emotions, which actually may be helpful. This allows many people, when in the grip of great danger, to avoid being overwhelmed by compassionate emotions and horrible sights that might otherwise incapacitate them.
So it blocks out the horror temporarily.
Kind of. It permits them to think clearly and act effectively. This is a stark contrast to the popular idea of widespread mass hysteria or immediate breakdown. It suggests a built-in psychological defense mechanism that can facilitate rational decision-making in extreme circumstances.
That's incredibly counterintuitive, and the book directly addresses the very real fear that you might experience by differentiating between symptoms of anxiety and actual radiation injury. It notes that anxiety, fear, and terror can result in symptoms very similar to those caused by radiation: nausea, vomiting, extreme trembling, diarrhea.
Yeah. The physical symptoms of extreme fear can look a lot like mild radiation sickness.
The psychological impact can mimic physical illness.
Exactly. Persons who learn to understand the nature of our inherent human traits and behavior and symptoms are less likely to become terrorized and ineffective. Knowing what to expect from your own body's fear response and being able to distinguish those symptoms from actual physical harm due to radiation can prevent terror from taking over and allow you to remain functional.
It's about being mentally prepared for the emotional onslaught as much as the physical one. The lessons from Hiroshima and Nagasaki are also quite encouraging in terms of human resilience.
They really are.
Despite the horrific burns and injuries the Japanese survivors endured, open panic or extremely disorganized behavior occurred only in exceptional cases among the hundreds of thousands of survivors, and serious, permanent psychological derangements were rare. This suggests a remarkable human capacity for coping, even in the face of unimaginable tragedy.
What's truly fascinating here is the social resilience that emerges. The source notes that history indicates Americans in the food-rich areas would help the starving, drawing parallels to heroic Russians who drove food trucks to starving Leningrad through bursting Nazi bombs and shells during World War II, displaying immense self-sacrifice.
Wow.
This suggests that surely an essential part of CYC preparations for surviving a modern war is a well-founded assurance that many citizens of a strong society will struggle to help each other and will work together with little regard for danger and loss.
It's a reminder that even in catastrophe, humanity's better angels can prevail. That assurance that society won't simply collapse into utter anarchy is a powerful psychological tool. It instills a sense of shared purpose and resilience.
Definitely.
Okay, let's move to the most critical immediate sanctuary once that warning comes. Shelter. The book calls it the greatest need.
For survival, and it is to fundamentally improve your chances of surviving a nuclear attack. Your primary need would be an adequate shelter equipped for many days of occupancy. The source clarifies that while a good fallout shelter would suffice in more than 95% of the area of the United States, meaning areas not hit by blast or fire.
Most of the country then.
Right, but most existing buildings, including many home basements, would provide inadequate fallout protection if winds blew from the wrong direction, carrying heavy fallout directly over them. They simply aren't designed for the necessary
shielding, so a normal basement isn't enough to offer real protection from heavy fallout. Here's where the Swiss come in. Often held up as a global gold standard, the book highlights Switzerland as having the best civil defense system, which already includes blast shelters for over 85% of all its citizens.
85%? That's incredible coverage.
They've been investing steadily for decades, costing the equivalent of $12.60 per capita in 1984, a modest amount annually. That has built an incredible national capability, illustrating that such comprehensive preparedness is achievable for a determined nation.
This deep, decades-long commitment demonstrates that it's not an impossible feat, but a matter of sustained political will and public investment. The book then brilliantly moves to expedient shelter, what you could do quickly and effectively, even in a crisis.
And this is where the practicality of Kearny's research truly shines. The source cites extensive field tests, showing that tens of millions of Americans in a nuclear war crisis would work hard and successfully to build Earth-covered expedient shelters within a few days.
Tens of millions.
The minimum assumed time available to Americans is 48 hours, if, for instance, the Russians begin to evacuate their cities, triggering our intelligence systems. So you might have 2 precious days, which, while short, is far from nothing.
The success of these rapid constructions, however, depends on 2 vital first, strong motivating leadership from high officials to direct and encourage the effort. And second, and crucially, that Americans would have received well in advance shelter building and other practical tested survival instructions.
Knowing what to do beforehand.
Exactly. This is precisely why engaging with this material now is so important. You can't learn how to build these shelters when the crisis is already unfolding.
The evidence for these expedient shelters is astonishing and humbling. The book gives compelling examples from Nagasaki, where some survivors, against all odds, emerged uninjured from tunnel shelters built for conventional air raids and located as close as 1/3 mile from ground zero.
Even without specialized blast doors that close without blast doors.
And even more remarkably, many Earth-covered family shelters were essentially undamaged in areas where blast and fire destroyed all buildings.
Figure 1.5 in the book vividly shows a crude wooden frame shelter less than 100 yards from ground zero at Nagasaki. Completely undamaged despite calculated maximum overpressure of about 65 pounds per square inch, 65 psi.
65 psi. That's immense pressure, like being deep underwater.
It is. To put 65 psi in perspective for you, that's roughly equivalent to the pressure at the bottom of a 150-foot column of water, or the force a high-pressure fire hose can deliver directly. This simple shelter, made of wood and earth, withstood that immense pressure.
Incredible.
Additionally, a specifically tested small pole shelter equipped with blast doors was undamaged at 53 psi in a recent blast with only slight internal pressure rise. This conclusively proves that many families can build such shelters in a few days that would withstand immense forces, not just protect from fallout.
That's a truly powerful testament to simple, robust design. Let's get into the specifics of one of these, the pole-covered trench shelter. Practical design detailed in the book. For a family of 6, the recommended dimensions for the main room are 3.5 feet wide, 4.5 feet high, and 16.5 feet long. It even includes a small stand-up hole at one end, so occupants can stretch several times a day, which is crucial for comfort in a confined space.
Avoiding cramps and stiffness. The entry and emergency exit trenches are ingeniously designed to be quite narrow, only 22 inches wide to minimize radiation entering the shelter.
Narrow to block radiation.
Exactly. What's particularly fascinating and a core principle of radiation shielding is how effectively turns reduce radiation. A single right-angle turn alone causes a reduction of about 90% of gamma radiation, so the path into the shelter is as important as its walls.
90% reduction from one turn.
Okay.
And for radiation shielding itself, if you're far enough away from the explosion's initial
Fireball, which most people would be, fallout.
shelters need not provide additional shielding to protect occupants against initial nuclear radiation. The primary concern then becomes fallout. The book explains that all the excavated earth from digging the trench about 30 inches deep, mounted over the roof poles of the pole-covered trench shelter, gave it an astonishing protection factor, or PF, of over 300.
PF 300. That means occupants would receive less than 1,300ths of the gamma-ray dose they'd get outside. That's significant protection.
Even more fascinating, the source notes that once you have about 30 inches of earth, adding more doesn't significantly improve the PF unless you also lengthen the entry trenches, demonstrating an optimal point for expedient construction.
Right. Diminishing returns on just piling more dirt. This kickoff rating is key because it quantifies the safety. It's also important to note the adaptability of these designs. The main trench could be enlarged later to make a much more livable room without disturbing its completed roof, allowing for semi-permanent living quarters once it becomes safe to emerge for limited periods.
Thinking ahead. But having a robust shelter is only part of the equation. You need to breathe, and in a confined, crowded space. Ventilation is called the greatest need in crowded shelters, especially in warm or hot weather.
Yeah, this is often overlooked but absolutely critical. Without adequate ventilation, conditions quickly become intolerable. Temperature, humidity, carbon dioxide from exhaled breath can build up, leading to debilitating headaches and deeper, more strained breathing.
Not pleasant.
And as we'll discuss, skin diseases are also likely to become a serious problem. FEMA's minimum of 3 cubic feet per minute, 3 CF per person, is really only for preventing carbon dioxide headaches in healthy people.
Just the bare minimum?
Bare minimum. Navy tests showed that even with 12 cubic feet per minute per person, conditions became difficult in cool August weather. In hot, humid weather, much more, up to 40 centimeters per occupant, is needed to maintain tolerable conditions. That's a significant amount of airflow for a manual system.
So how do you get that much air without electricity, especially after an EMP? The book offers 2 ingenious homemade solutions born from rigorous testing: the Kearny air pump, or KTP, and directional fans. These are game changers for expedient survival.
The TAPI is a manually powered pendulum-like air pump. It's incredibly efficient. A relatively compact 36 by 29-inch cap can force at least 1,000 cubic feet per minute through a shelter.
1,000 CFM manually?
Yeah, which is enough to adequately ventilate 25 occupants during extremely hot weather, or about 300 occupants during cold weather, provided the air is properly distributed. It's remarkably energy efficient, requiring minimal effort to produce significant airflow, and can be constructed from common materials like plywood, sheet metal, tape, and wire. The book details the precise dimensions and construction steps, allowing virtually anyone to build one.
Directional fanning is even simpler, rediscovered by Dr. William Olson in 1980, and uses a fan made from widely available materials like bedsheet, cloth, or plywood on a simple frame.
Like waving a big fan.
Pretty much a 14 by 16-inch 2-handle directional fan can force about 300 cubic feet per minute, enough for up to 9 adults crowded into a small shelter in extremely hot, humid weather. While more laborious than a cap, it's quickly made and very effective for smaller groups requiring continuous but manageable effort.
Kearny himself observed Chinese civil defense professionals making and testing both caps and directional fans, which speaks to their universal practicality. He likened their evaluation process to how Thomas Edison and Henry Ford would have evaluated simple devices of possible great importance to millions.
Simple, accessible, high-impact tech. Now, on the subject of air quality, the book makes a surprising but important point about air filters. It clarifies that air filters are not essential for small family-sized shelters for fallout protection.
You don't need them for fallout itself, right?
Because inhalation is far less of a threat than ingestion, most radioactive particles are too heavy to remain airborne in breathable concentrations.
While not essential for fallout, the source notes that 2 thicknesses of bath towel, when used as a rudimentary filter, can remove about 85% of even microscopic aerosols as small as 1 to 5 microns in diameter. These smaller aerosols are often used in biological warfare.
Ah, so a potential dual use.
right? So while not a first priority for potential biological threats, these simple filters could be a useful addition to a KP, demonstrating the versatility of basic materials.
This highlights a crucial point about bureaucratic inertia that Kearny himself often criticized. The source is quite blunt, stating that once any bureaucracy issues dangerously faulty equipment or instructions, it rarely corrects them except under pressure. It criticizes hundreds of thousands of potentially life-endangering civil defense pamphlets and booklets, even from FEMA, for failing to mention the crucial need for forced ventilation during warm weather or Expedient's simple means for providing pumped air.
So official guidance missed a critical point.
Yeah, this underscores why Kearny's independently tested ground-up research is so vital. It fills critical, potentially lethal gaps in official guidance.
It's a stark reminder that official guidance isn't always comprehensive and independent. Field-tested research like Kearny's often provides the most reliable information on the practical side of shelter maintenance. Keeping shelters dry, especially those below the water table, is a constant challenge.
Right water seepage, the book advises that a
prudently designed shelter has its emergency exit slightly above the surface of the surrounding earth to prevent flooding from heavy rains. Concrete isn't completely watertight, and even coatings can fail over time, so drainage is paramount.
And if you have a high water table, a watertight shelter might actually float upward due to buoyancy, unless its weight plus the weight of its covering earth is sufficient to withstand its buoyancy. So even the ground itself can become a hidden threat if not accounted for in design.
Yeah, the shelter could pop right out of the ground.
And don't forget insect control. Screen doors or panels are vital against the swarms of flies and mosquitoes likely to become dangerous pests in fallout areas. With the cap providing forced ventilation, you can have both adequate air and effective insect protection without sacrificing airflow.
Now let's talk about the specific types of radiation you'd be dealing with in a fallout environment. There's a distinction between beta particles and gamma rays, and understanding the difference is key to your protection. Beta and gamma. Okay, beta particles are high-speed electrons. Direct contact with fresh fallout particles for at least several tens of minutes can cause beta burns on exposed skin, similar to a sunburn, but deeper. However, prompt washing will prevent beta burns, and even thin clothing offers considerable protection, highlighting the importance of basic hygiene.
So wash off any dust.
Cover your skin right. Gamma rays, on the other hand, are the primary concern for fallout radiation. They are by far the most dangerous radiation given off by fallout particles. They're much like a tiny X-ray machine and are highly penetrating, capable of traveling through solid objects and causing internal damage.
That's the one that goes through walls.
Exactly. This is why dense shielding like thick earth or concrete is so vital for your shelter, as it's the only effective way to stop gamma rays.
Finally, the critical question of when it's safe to emerge from your shelter. The source suggests that within 2 weeks after an attack, the occupants of most shelters could safely stop using them, or could work outside the shelters for an increasing number of hours each day.
2 weeks for most areas.
The key exception would be in areas of extremely heavy fallout where radiation levels remain dangerously high. To know precisely when to do this and for how long, occupants would need a reliable fallout meter or accurate confirmed information from nearby reliable measurements. It's not a guess, it's a calculated risk based on data.
You need that meter.
So a reliable radiation meter isn't just for peace of mind. It's literally for life or death decisions. That leads us into Part 4, Sustaining Life, covering water, food, and crucial medical preparedness. First, water. This is undoubtedly the most immediate need after securing your shelter.
Absolutely. The source outlines the varying daily water needs which are dependent on conditions. In extremely hot weather, you need 4 quarts of water per day per person and 1 tablespoon of salt to replenish electrolytes lost through sweating a gallon a
day in the heat.
Pretty much in cool conditions. 3 pints of water a day may suffice if your food intake is low in protein. For a baseline 2-week shelter stay, the recommendation is that 15 gallons per person should be stored.
Storing that much water isn't always easy in a small shelter, especially given the weight. The book offers ingenious solutions, such as plastic-lined storage pits dug in the earth close to the shelter.
Like a small underground pool?
Sort of. These can be surprisingly capacious. An 8-foot-long, 27-inch wide, 30-inch deep pit lined with 4 mil polyethylene can hold about 200 gallons. And remarkably, two common 30-gallon polyethylene trash bags, one inside the other when filled, held 16 gallons of water and were undamaged by 50 psi.
Blast effects when buried trash bags survived.
50 psi, showing their surprising resilience for below-ground shelters.
You can even siphon water into the shelter from an outside storage pit. This avoids the need to physically carry heavy containers. A practical tip from the book for you to start the siphon. Exhale as much breath as you can, then place the end of the tube in your mouth and suck hard and long to create the necessary vacuum and start the flow.
Good old-fashioned suction.
It works. It's a simple technique that bypasses the bow.
Need for a pump for purifying your water, especially from potentially contaminated sources. The book provides simple instructions using readily available household bleach containing 5.25% sodium hypochlorite. It's 1 scant teaspoonful to each 10 gallons of clear water, or 2 drops per quart for smaller amounts. Basic bleach purification for muddy or very cloudy water. Double that amount and then wait at least 30 minutes for the chlorine to kill pathogens.
It also clarifies a common point of confusion. Warnings like not for personal use on bleach bottles can be safely disregarded if it's pure sodium hypochlorite and used in these specified quantities. Good to know for safe water sources after an attack. The book lists deep wells, water tanks and covered reservoirs, and covered seepage pits or shallow hand-dug wells, especially if they are waterproof to prevent surface contamination. The source even cites a Chinese civil defense manual showing a well dug specifically to obtain safe water from a fallout-contaminated source, demonstrating its universal applicability.
And on that note, the book reveals a surprising efficacy of basic earth filtration. Filtering through earth removes essentially all of the fallout particles and more of the dissolved radioactive material than does boiling water distillation.
Earth filters out radiation better than boiling.
Apparently, it's also more effective in removing radioactive iodines than our ordinary ion exchange water softeners or charcoal filters, removing about 99% of the radioactivity in water. This is a huge factor, as boiling only kills biological contaminants and charcoal removes some chemicals. But neither are effective against radioactive isotopes.
So letting water seep through soil is a powerful purifier for radioactivity.
Earth acts as a natural, highly efficient filter for these specific contaminants.
For a long-term water strategy, it's important to understand that most pied water would not run for months after a large nuclear attack due to power outages, damaged infrastructure, and lack of personnel. However, there's good news. In less than a month, radioactive decay will make it safe to haul water from nearby sources, such as wells, ponds, streams, or even digging a water pit in an apparently dry stream, as water often collects just below the
cave surface, so initial storage is key, but finding water later becomes possible. Right?
This means initial water storage is critical, but longer-term solutions become viable relatively.
Quickly moving to food. The immediate need isn't as critical as water or shelter. The book states that food would not be essential for survival during the first 2 or 3 weeks for most healthy adults, as the human body can sustain itself on fat reserves for a surprisingly long time.
Except for vulnerable groups, right?
Infants, small children, the aged and the sick are, of course, exceptions.
A profoundly reassuring fact is because of the remarkable productivity of American agriculture, there usually would be enough grain and beans in storage to supply surviving Americans with sufficient food for at least a year following a heavy nuclear attack.
We grow a lot of food. We do.
So the food exists. The primary challenge, of course, would be distribution from producing regions to survivors and then the processing of these unprocessed foods.
And that leads to a crucial, almost forgotten survival skill, expedient processing of whole grains and soybeans. Few Americans today know how to process whole kernel grains into meal or flour. You can't just boil them and expect to thrive. The nutritional absorption is insufficient and they are difficult to chew and digest in large quantities.
Right. You need to break them down. The book details practical methods refined through Oak Ridge field tests. For example, using a can and a bundle of pipes as a pestle, you can pound 1.5 pounds of wheat into fine and coarse meal in about 4 minutes.
Like a makeshift mortar and pestle?
Exactly. Then you can use a window screen to sieve the different consistencies, separating the fine meal from the coarser parts. A fine nylon net or cheesecloth can even yield flour fine enough for babies, or for making thin, digestible porridges. These are low-tech solutions that turn raw materials into usable food.
The book also notes that in a post-attack recovery phase, the thousands of grain grinding machines already on tens of thousands of hog and cattle farms could be repurposed for human consumption using existing farm equipment. A single John Deere grinder mixer, for instance, could process 9 tons of grain per hour, which is an astonishing 400 times as fast as using muscle power, a vital component for large-scale national recovery and feeding widespread populations.
Now, for cooking with minimum fuel, people need some hot food and drink for the comforting effect and to promote a sense of well-being. Even in warm weather, hot meals provide a psychological boost in stressful conditions.
Morale is important.
Very. The book offers the bucket stove developed at Oak Ridge as the most satisfactory Expedient stove model.
A bucket stove? What's that like?
It's remarkably efficient, portable, and designed to burn small pieces of wood or even tightly twisted newspaper sticks. It can cook beans or grain with less fuel than is required to soft-boil an egg over a small campfire, making every piece of fuel count.
It's efficient.
And for even more fuel efficiency, there's the fireless cooker, a well-insulated box that saves a great deal of fuel and time for slow cooking. You bring your food to a boil on the bucket stove, then transfer it to the fireless cooker, and it continues to cook for hours using retained heat, freeing up valuable fuel for other uses.
Like a primitive slow cooker.
Exactly. Regarding nutrition, while grain-only diets are indeed possible for adults for months, they have critical deficiencies in vitamins A, C, and D. For long-term health and to prevent debilitating illnesses, a balanced diet requires some higher-quality protein, such as beans combined with grains, milk powder, or preserved meat or eggs consumed at every meal.
And speaking of critical deficiencies, the source explicitly calls scurvy the deadly curse that will be the first incapacitating, then lethal vitamin deficiency to afflict unprepared, uninformed Americans in a prolonged survival scenario.
Scurvy? Wow.
But the solution is surprisingly simple and low cost. 1 kilogram, 1 million milligrams of pure vitamin C, which is the crystalline ascorbic acid form. A 25 milligrams daily dose is ample to prevent scurvy, and the pure crystals do not deteriorate over years of storage.
So just stocking pure vitamin C powder is key.
You can even get this from mail.
Order sources today for vitamin A, which is crucial for vision and immune function. Sources include yellow corn, carrots, and leafy green vegetables. Multivitamin pills are the best option if available for vitamin D, essential for bone health, especially for babies. Sun exposure is key. Oregon multivitamin pills. Basic vitamins make a huge difference. These simple supplements can make a monumental difference in long-term health and survival.
And here's a critical, highly specific detail, often overlooked, but profoundly potassium iodide key.
Key for the thyroid, this is a
simple, very low cost means of attaining almost complete protection against radioactive iodine, affecting the thyroid gland, which is a major component of fallout. Especially important for children. It's 99% effective in blocking uptake.
To be precise, you take 130 milligrams dose daily for adults and children over 1 year and 65 milligrams for babies under 1. You should take it as soon as possible after public health officials tell you, or when you detect radioactive iodine.
Timing is important.
Crucially, the source issues strong warnings. Do not take elemental iodine, like tincture of iodine, or try to get enough from iodized salt. They are either poisonous or contain far too little iodine to be effective for this purpose.
Okay. Only potassium iodide, right?
Even pregnant and nursing women and babies can safely take this drug. And it can be taken even with existing thyroid problems.
While Kiva is available by prescription and liquid solution for years of storage, dry crystalline or granule forms are much better as they don't degrade. The book even offers practical advice on how to mitigate its painfully bad taste.
Apparently, it tastes awful by dissolving it
in at least 2 ounces of milk, orange juice, or cold drink to make it palatable, especially for children.
And here's a broader implication. For Kiki, it offers crucial protection even from trans-Pacific fallout from overseas nuclear wars, for example in Asia or Europe. This type of long-distance fallout, even from a limited exchange, could result in tens of thousands of unprepared Americans suffering thyroid injury.
Fallout from thousands of miles away?
Yeah. Stored carry would allow families to safely eat a normal diet long before those without it could do so, as it prevents the thyroid from absorbing radioactive iodine from contaminated milk, fruits, and vegetables.
So even a conflict far away could potentially impact your milk supply here in the US and your family's thyroid health. Now, how do you know if there's dangerous radiation out there? The fundamental problem is that human beings cannot feel, smell, taste, hear, or see fallout radiation.
It's invisible, odorless, tasteless.
It's an invisible threat. And with EMP potentially knocking out most radio stations, eliminating official information, only an accurate, dependable fallout meter will enable survivors to answer these life or death questions.
These questions are vital for making informed decisions about your safety. They include which parts of the shelter give the best protection, how large is the radiation dose being received by each person, when is it safe to leave the shelter for a few minutes. In 1986, commercially available dose rate meters were prohibitively expensive, ranging from $375 to over $1,000, putting them out of reach for most families.
So Kearny, ever the pragmatist, developed a solution, the KFM, or Kearny Fallout Meter. The KFM, this do-it-yourself fallout meter, was invented in 1977 and is described as accurate and dependable. What's truly remarkable is its accessibility. Untrained people from junior high school science classes to grandmothers have successfully built and used them, guided only by the field-tested instructions in the book.
Anyone can build it. That's the point.
It's a testament to its simple, robust design.
It works on a basic electrostatic principle. An electrostatic charge is transferred from a homemade charging device, which can be as simple as rubbing hard plastic on dry paper, or even using a strip of Scotch Magic transparent tape. Tow two incredibly lightweight aluminum foil leaves inside a sealed can, which acts as the ionization chamber.
Foil leaves in a can?
Basically, yeah. As gamma radiation passes through this chamber, it ionizes the air, causing the leaves to lose their charge and move closer together. The rate at which they collapse indicates the dose rate. The only critical internal condition is that the air inside must be kept very dry, using drying agents like anhydrate, which can be made by heating gypsum wallboard.
Okay, keep it dry inside.
That's crucial for it to hold a charge.
You can read its separation with a simple roller and a table. In the book converts that discharge rate into row engines per hour, or RAR. This allows you to precisely calculate your total dose multiplied by hours exposed and determine your shelter's protection factor by dividing the outside dose rate by the inside.
Dose rate, so you can measure your shelter's effectiveness.
The practicality is impressive. Untrained families could make one in 3 to 4 hours and learn to use it in 1.5 hours. This empowers you to make critical decisions without external guidance.
The only real challenges are that KFMs cannot be charged in very humid air or areas of heavy fallout, hundreds of NAR, which could ionize the air too quickly. For these situations, the solution is a dry bucket, a sealed bucket with anhydrate inside, for charging in humid conditions or taking the KFM to a more protected area briefly to charge it before returning it to the measurement point.
Got it. Light in the darkness is another critical yet often overlooked need. The book shares a poignant anecdote from a shelter occupancy experiment involving a Utah family. At 2 a.m. on the third night, the inky blackness caused the mother, a stable woman who had never feared the dark, to experience her first claustrophobia.
Pure darkness can be really unnerving, especially underground.
This highlights the profound psychological need for continuous, even dim light in a confined, stressful environment.
And you can't use just any light source. Gasoline and kerosene lamps, while bright, produce gases that can cause headaches or even death due to carbon monoxide buildup and are fire hazards if knocked over by
blast, winds, or an earthquake. Way too dangerous for a shelter.
They are simply too dangerous for sealed or semi-sealed shelters.
So the book recommends safe, expedient lamps. First, long-burning candles sufficient for at least 14 nights of continuous light. Second, expedient oil lamps made from a 1-pint mason jar using common cooking.
Oil and a cotton string. Wick simple oil lamps. Very economical and for you.
With some pre-crisis setup. Low amperage 12-volt bulbs like those from a car instrument panel powered by a car battery can provide enough light for 10-15 nights without completely draining the battery. The book also suggests using reflective materials like aluminum foil or whiteboards to maximize the effect of light from these weak sources.
Moving to shelter hygiene and sanitation, this is often overlooked in emergency planning, but the book notes that in crowded shelters, especially during hot weather, skin diseases are likely to be a more serious problem than is generally recognized.
Skin problems? Really?
Yeah. A Navy test involving 99 men in an inadequately ventilated shelter showed alarmingly high incidences of heat rash and other skin complaints. 34 of 99 had heat rash, 23 had other issues despite daily medical treatment. Hot, humid, crowded. It's a recipe for skin trouble.
Prevention is absolutely key here. The book emphasizes washing sweat and dead skin multiple times a day, drawing on jungle native methods observed by Kearny. But it cautions against bathing several times a day with soap, which paradoxically can strip natural skin oils and exacerbate irritation in humid, hot, and crowded conditions.
So rinse often, but don't overdo the soap.
Simple water rinses are often more effective.
For human waste disposal, which is crucial for both health and morale. The book lists several highly effective expedient methods. The simplest is a covered garbage can or bucket, which should be removed outside when full or malodorous but not sealed gas-tight, as pressure can build right.
Needs to vent slightly.
A more effective method, especially for feces, is to defecate into a piece of plastic. 2 thicknesses of a thin dry cleaner bag work well. Tie it shut again, not gas-tight, and gently toss it outside daily. This prevents flies from contaminating themselves and potentially spreading disease to occupants.
Bag it and toss it. Okay.
The most advanced expedient method is a hose-vented 5-gallon can or bucket lined with a heavy plastic bag with a vent hose extending outside the shelter. This ingeniously allows foul gases to escape directly outdoors, greatly improving air quality inside.
That sounds much better.
And for fly control, which would be a major issue, a can of modern fly bait like Defly or approved golden malarin sprinkled on the plastic cover can kill literally thousands of flies, preventing them from entering the shelter and contaminating food or surfaces.
And grim as it is, the book directly addresses the disposal of dead bodies. It highlights that a simple test with a dead dog proved plastic bagging without perforations impractical due to gas pressure buildup. The recommendation: place the corpse in perforated plastic bags and move it outside as soon as odor is evident.
A sobering but necessary detail. This practical advice, while sobering, is essential for maintaining sanitation and morale in a taida.
Prolonged shelter stay now, a truly sobering but profoundly important section. Medical self-help, or what the book describes as benign neglect.
Benign neglects. Intriguing phrase.
The harsh reality is that life without modern medical help would be less painful and hazardous for those survivors who have some practical knowledge of what should be done or not done under primitive, unsanitary conditions. Doctors and hospitals as we know them would simply not exist in a post-attack environment.
Key principles are outlined for infected wounds. The counterintuitive advice is do not change dressings frequently. The formation of pus actually indicates the body fighting infection.
Don't mess with it too much, pretty much.
Kearny notes that in World War I, frequent cleaning in hospitals often introduced more bacteria and disrupted the body's natural healing process, leading to higher death rates, while later applying casts and dressings on infected wounds sometimes were not changed for weeks. Observations Kearny also made in China and India actually helped save limbs and lives by allowing the body to seal off and fight the infection.
Wow. Okay, what about broken bones?
For broken bones, apply simple splints to prevent movement and do not worry about deformities. MOHS can be corrected later. The immediate goal is to stabilize and prevent further injury, not to achieve perfect.
Alignment for shock, which can be a serious consequence of injury or trauma. Keep the victim warm and give plenty of slightly salted water to help restore fluid and electrolyte balance for heat prostration. Adequate fluids and salty water are also key.
Makes sense, rehydration and warmth for simple childbirth.
In the absence of medical personnel, the advice is simply keep hands off, unless absolutely necessary to minimize infection risk. Do not tie or cut the umbilical cord unless a potent disinfectant like tincture of iodine or alcohol is available. Instead, Wrap the cord and placenta around the infant until they dry and naturally detach hands off.
Let nature take its course if possible.
And for a toothache, a common and painful affliction, do not attempt to pull an aching tooth. Decaying teeth will eventually abscess and fall out, a painful but seldom fatal process endured by our ancestors for millennia. The book focuses on life-saving basics, not comfort.
On radiation sickness, the book clarifies that for most Americans, the help of doctors and modern treatments would not be of life or death importance, simply because those resources won't be available. It details dose response. Very few of those receiving acute doses of less than 100 GAR would become sick.
Less than 100 Brentian likely okay all.
Exposed to 100-200 R should recover. Most with less than about 350 R will recover without medical treatment, simply with rest, clean surroundings, and a balanced diet. Thousands in Hiroshima and Nagasaki survived serious radiation sickness, demonstrating the body's capacity for
recovery and a crucial reassurance to prevent fear from paralyzing you. Nursing radiation victims is not hazardous, and radiation sickness is not contagious.
Not contagious? That's vital to know for helping others.
You cannot cash radiation sickness from another person. Even a person dying from a massive dose of 5,000 Ryan is not sources of dangerous radiation by wartime standards. This understanding helps foster mutual aid and prevents isolation of the sick. The most effective protection the book stresses is prevention. Adequate shelter and essential life support items are the best means of saving lives.
Finally, let's talk about comfort and morale in a confined space. It's not just about physical survival, but psychological well-being during potentially weeks of close confinement.
The Utah family experiment, for instance, used folding chairs and plywood bunks in their pole-covered trench shelter, finding them far more comfortable than lying on the ground. Russian designs also show clever uses of benches with overhead bunks to maximize the cause.
Kamalang, making the space usable.
The book even describes how bed sheets can be transformed into ingenious, lightweight bedsheet hammocks and bedsheet chairs, which can be quickly converted from sleeping to sitting positions, saving valuable floor space and providing a sense of normalcy and comfort.
Bedsheet furniture. Clever. These are ideal for evacuation scenarios where you need to carry lightweight multi-purpose items.
For staying warm in cold weather without fire, which would be risky in a shelter, the key is maximizing trapped dead air through layers of clothing. An outer windbreaker layer, like a simple brown paper bag worn over a wool cap, prevents warmed air from escaping and cold air from penetrating insulation. Paper bags as windbreakers newspaper or unglazed brown paper work surprisingly well for insulation, while still allowing water vapor to escape. It's also vital to insulate the head and neck, as they have many blood vessels near the surface and lose heat rapidly, disproportionately affecting overall body warmth.
Keep your head and neck warm. Got it.
The author even recounts his own experience, sleeping comfortably in freezing temperatures using many thicknesses of newspaper under a bathrobe for insulation, a surprisingly effective expedient for footwear. Newspaper soles in layers can provide vital insulation, covered with waterproof material if available. Newspaper boots. Russian civil defense manuals even advise taking winter boots when evacuating. Even in summer, huddle together for shared body heat. Avoid sweating by removing clothing when exercising. And crucially, don't smoke or drink an alcoholic beverage to warm yourself, as they both lead to rapid body heat loss by constricting blood vessels or dilating them respectively.
No booze or smokes for warmth, right? And for a crucial lifeline to information and morale, the book strongly advises including a transistor radio with extra batteries and a metal box for EMP protection. This would be your only window to the outside world to glean information, hear reassuring voices, and maintain a sense of connection.
So what does all this highly specific, rigorously tested knowledge mean for you right now? The final part of our deep dive is minimum pre-crisis preparations, our personal action plan.
Okay, the takeaway actions. The book is very clear.
Your chances of surviving a nuclear attack will be improved if you make the following low-cost preparations before a second serious crisis arises.
This urgency is paramount because if you wait until a crisis begins, you're likely to be among the majority who will have to make do with inadequate supplies, as stores are cleared by panicked shoppers. Many essential items cannot be made or acquired quickly during a few days of tense crisis. Even if you have the instructions, it's a proactive approach.
It also notes that some informed citizens, particularly homeowners in outer suburbs or rural areas not directly adjacent to hard targets, might wisely choose to build earth-covered expedient blast shelters in their backyards rather than evacuate to an unfamiliar area, thus staying with their valuable possessions and local knowledge.
Staying put versus evacuating is a key decision. This is a legitimate choice for those with sufficient warning time and resources.
Let's run through the essential checklist from the source. The items you should consider acquiring or preparing now for: keep on hand shovels, a pick if your soil is hard, a bow saw with an extra blade, a hammer, and 4mm polyethylene film for rainproofing your planned expedient shelter. Also a supply of necessary nails and dur.
Puck basic construction tools and materials.
These become priceless for radiation measurement, a truly life-saving tool. Make 1 or 2 KFMs the Kearny fallout meters and learn how to use this simple instrument. This is critical for making informed, data-driven decisions about when and how long it's safe to emerge from your shelter, or which parts of it offer the best protection.
Build that KFM. Practice using it for food. Store at least a 2-week supply of compact, non-perishable food for adults and older children. The basic dry foods described in the book, whole grains and beans, are the most cost-effective and calorie-dense options.
Grains and beans the basics if your
family includes babies or small children. Be sure to store more milk powder, vegetable oil, and sugar as their nutritional needs are more delicate. The book also notes that continuing to breastfeed babies would greatly simplify their care during a crisis.
For sanitation, prepare a hose-vented 5-gallon can with heavy plastic bags for liners, along with toilet paper and tampons. Also essential for controlling disease. Acquire insect screen or mosquito netting and some modern plow bait like die fly.
Sanitation sounds mundane, but is crucial for health and morale in a confined space. For medicines, gather any special medications needed by family members. Critically acquire potassium iodide, a 2-ounce bottle and a medicine dropper for prophylactic protection of the thyroid gland against radioactive iodines.
Again, super important.
A basic first aid kit and a good supply of antibiotic ointment are also essential for treating minor injuries and preventing infection without professional medical help.
For light stock long-burning candles for at least 14 nights. The materials for an expedient oil lamp, cotton string wicks, cooking oil, a reliable flashlight, and extra batteries. Remember that psychological need for light.
And finally, a transistor radio with extra batteries and a metal box in which to protect it from EMP is listed as an other essential for information and morale. Your vital link to any surviving broadcasts.
So after this deep dive, you should also review a broader evacuation checklist, like those found in other survival guides, to identify any other unique requirements specific to your family. The book reiterates time and again that these low-cost, practical preparations significantly improve your chances of survival. It shifts the paradigm from helplessness to agency.
This deep dive has shown that survival in an extreme scenario is not merely a matter of luck, but of knowledge and preparedness, painstakingly researched and tested over decades. And it transforms an abstract terror into a concrete challenge, with actionable steps empowering you to approach such a daunting topic with clarity rather than fear in a sabri
world often shaped by fear and misinformation. We've just seen how practical, well-researched knowledge can turn an unimaginable scenario into one where agency and hope can persist. The sources reveal a surprising human capacity for resilience, ingenuity, and mutual aid in the face of conflict catastrophe, which often defies popular, more pessimistic narratives.
Yeah,